Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, and we battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time, according to two film geeks from Wiltshire, England. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a review and subscribe. This week on the Film vs. Film podcast, as Ghostbusters Afterlife hits the big screens across the world, we'll be having a look at long-awaited sequels. As always, our resident demon baby is with us. So if you don't give him a cookie soon, he'll bite your face off.
Yeah, I might bite it off anyway, just for dessert.
All right. Yes, of course, I'm indeed talking about Boaz Dix. How are you, sir?
I'm incredible. I'm amazing. I'm trying to think of a Star Wars pun as well. I can't think of one,
but can't.
I'm trying to force it. There we go. That worked. So, doing all right.
Nice. Right, should we get straight into it with my pick then? Yep. I went with Star Wars: The Force Awakens. It was kind of a really easy choice for me when we came up with the subject, long-awaited sequels for an episode. I think I've never been more excited for a film to come out than Star Wars: The Force Awakens, I think.
Yeah.
Especially when they literally released like a teaser trailer a whole year before the film came out.
Yeah. No, I remember the teaser.
In 2014.
I remember that lit up everywhere. Just everywhere was talking about Star Wars. It was like, can you believe it? It's like, it's just blowing everybody's mind. It's like, really? Yeah, I remember that. Because I think I remember the first time I saw the teaser, and there was no... I can't even remember where I saw it. Maybe the TV or the cinema. I can't exactly remember. But even just seeing, in the Junkyard Planet, and it's like going down a shaft, and I'm like, what the hell is this? She's scavenging for something, and, pulls her sort of mask so you can see her. And then it was like Star Wars, and you're like, what the hell? It kind of came out of nowhere. You're like, oh. I was thinking, is this some sort of like Indiana Jones thing? And Star Wars.
I've never got more chills from watching a trailer. So it's a really easy choice for me. So what happens in Star Wars: The Force Awakens? We start off with a group of like stormtroopers coming down onto a desert planet called Jakku into this village, and they're going to raid this village because Poe Dameron is handed a piece of a map of where Luke Skywalker is. Oscar Isaac plays Poe Dameron, so he kind of puts it into a droid called BB-8, the cutest droid ever since R2-D2.
Yeah, it sold a lot of toys.
Yeah. So in that battle, Poe Dameron gets captured, but BB-8 gets away, and BB-8 meets Rey, a scavenger on Jakku, who goes through large, star destroyers to scavenge for parts in exchange for portions of food, literally just to survive. She lives in an AT-AT in the desert. And then obviously she comes across BB-8. BB-8 kind of says he needs to get back to the rebellion, but then meanwhile Finn has a crisis of conscience during the battle and decides to rescue Poe Dameron in the Star Destroyer, and they kind of crash down to Jakku. Finn and Rey meet, and Finn pretends to be a rebellion fighter, so they escape using the Millennium Falcon. Then they meet Han Solo and Chewie, which is awesome. And then they have some scrapes with some giant eyeball monsters with tentacles.
Yeah.
And escape that. And then they obviously eventually get back to the rebels, the rebellion. They discover a new base called Starkiller Base that literally destroys the Republic planets within literally one strike. The laser literally splits off into multiple lasers and destroys the planets just like that. So they kind of plan an attack, basically very similar to New Hope, but we'll get into that, I guess, to basically blow up Starkiller Base. Through like the second half of the film, Rey discovers that she is force sensitive and kind of freaks out a bit as well, and uses the force powers to escape the Starkiller base and ends up fighting Kylo Ren as well. I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was great. Last Jedi I really like as well. I really don't get why a lot of people don't like that film. I don't get it. Sometimes it feels like I watched a different movie. but I think most people are in agreement that Rise of Skywalker isn't great at all. But but certainly this first one is very good, I would say. How about you?
I agree. I definitely agree. I don't think it's a question of think. This is my favourite one of the sequel trilogy, you know?
Okay.
Like, without question. And yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more, even upon a rewatch. I'm like, oh, shit, okay. I kind of forgot, like, how visually quite, appealing it is.
Right, directing then. I like the frantic nature of the opening battle on Jakku. Certainly does feel very J.J. Abrams to me. A lot of, like, light flashes and fast cutting. There's always a lot going on. But what feels so satisfying and nostalgic is, of course, the John Williams score. When Kylo Ren's ship lands and the score changes to be more sinister, it just feels really cool in that moment. But definitely the coolest bit is when Kylo Ren stops Poe's blaster bolt in midair and the camera like tracks past it with Poe as he's being captured, with signature JJ lens flares. It just looks really cool because no one's ever really done that using the Force before. And I think that's one of the great strengths of the sequel trilogies, how creative they are with the Force, exploring new ways to use the Force. Plus later on when Kylo Ren tries to find the map in Rey's head, they have like a Force mind reading battle, and the sound effects play a huge part, not just in the acting, with different frequencies of drone noise working with the actors' movements. It just works really well in that scene as well.
Yeah. One of my things that I kind of noticed upon this rewatch of this film, and I kind of coined a term for it just generally in the visuals of this film, is there's a lot of scenes, and I mean a lot of scenes, where they look like, a lot of the shots look like they could be posters. Just so much of it just looks like it could be a poster. So I had this term, basically, it's shot as, a giant, it's meant to be like a giant poster. And it's just one of these things, like, it kind of clicked in my head where Rey is coming out of her home, which is the AT-AT, and just kind of eating her lunch, on a kind of sand dune with the AT-AT behind her. And I'm like, damn, that would be a good poster. And then you just go through the film, and I'm like, shit, I could pause this bit, where the TIE fighters are swarming around the Millennium Falcon. I'm like, that would be an awesome poster. I just keep going like that throughout the film. They have a lot of really wide shots of, the action or just the characters in center ground with some stuff going along, and it kind of stays relatively consistent. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's not so much going on that you're like, whoa, Jesus. But it kind of, do you know what I mean? It kind of lets the camera take it all in.
Yeah, definitely.
And you just get a kind of feeling, especially I do, like, you could pause these moments in the action scenes or in the...
and just look at it for a bit. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, or in the calmer bits where the characters are together. You just pause that, you go, dum, I've got a poster,
Yeah.
You can just slap that on a poster. I just found that kind of unique and kind of strange because I'm like, I don't recall many films, big action epic films, where I could say that kind of stuff about.
So I think that's kind of how they develop the story in Star Wars films. They're always like, right, let's get lots of concept art done and see what we want to see in a Star Wars film. Let's gather loads of concept art and like, I like that one, I like that one. Let's work all this great art into the story.
Yeah.
And this film is no different,
Exactly. Let's find a way to incorporate that specific shot or shots straight onto the screen.
Talking of design, I like a lot of the new design elements of The Force Awakens. I like the new streamlined design of the stormtroopers. That looked really nice. Kylo Ren looks awesome, especially the design of the mask. The way it looks a bit battered is a nice touch. BB-8 is a genius idea for the new droid, in my opinion, which JJ designed himself, actually. Not so keen on the new look of the X-Wings, but that design comes straight from the amazing concept art from Ralph McQuarrie. But I think my favourite new design element is Kylo Ren's lightsaber, which is like a cross-hilt design, like it's a medieval sword. and made to look like Ren designed it himself, as it's all like sparky, so he hasn't like made it properly from a kyber crystal.
Yeah, because unlike other lightsabers in the other films, and even Luke's lightsaber in this film, where the beam is smooth, it's like it's got edges and it's very smooth. Yeah, this one is sparking, and it kind of looked like it's on fire. It's less a lightsaber than more of a fire sword.
Yeah. It makes the character more menacing,
It does. It is very unique, and I kind of like that in the Star Wars films. When they make a new series or trilogy or whatever, everybody loves the lightsabers, but to bring in a new design, so you don't get sort of bored with the old look of them. Like the double lightsaber blew my fucking mind.
When
Darth Maul did it, you're like, holy shit, they do that.
And then the second one was so disappointing. It was like, Dooku just has a curved hilt.
He has a curved hilt. You're like, that sucks. But anyway, I think that blew my mind, and then this blew my mind. Okay, that's a really cool design for a lightsaber. I heard a lot of people were shitting on the design before, that they said the crossguard, they didn't like it or how it looked. The crossguard is cool, and not only that, it makes sense. Why the hell doesn't every lightsaber have a crossguard? You think, how many people in the Star Wars series lose their hands to lightsaber? A crossguard would stop this from happening. Yeah?
Paul.
Knights have worked this out thousands of years ago. It's just common sense. Just make a fucking cross hilt. So.
Because technically Star Wars is in our universe, I always feel like, because the blue text you see at the start is a long time ago in a galaxy
far, far away.
So they don't say it's a different universe.
No, I completely agree with that. Yeah. Although, like, when they say a long time ago, it's so ambiguous, because you're like, are humans even around at the time that Star Wars is going on? Like, is it just the dinosaurs, and then shit's going on in like a galaxy far away? I don't know.
And of course, Captain Phasma as the Chrome Stormtrooper looks really cool, but just not in it enough, I don't think.
She was very disappointing, because it seemed like she was only invented, to make, some sort of action figure, or to make to make merchandise. Just like, hey, we got a golden stormtrooper, and you're like, oh, is this golden stormtrooper interesting? Does she have like a huge backstory? Yeah, Captain Phasma. Oh, yeah. But she's barely in it at all. She doesn't really play like a big role in the movie.
Because Gwendoline Christie is great as an actress, amazing in Game of Thrones, so it's a bit of a waste.
Yeah, she was just wasted. She was just completely wasted, yeah.
I love how the action scene in Jakku develops, where Finn and Rey are spotted by like two stormtroopers and start shooting at them in a few brilliant shots with long lenses, creating great depth of action with the blaster bolts and explosions and the village whizzing past the camera as the camera tracks the characters.
Yeah.
Then the action gets bigger with the TIE fighters are called in for an airstrike, even though it's literally just two people with no weapons, but there we go. But there are some amazing explosions in that. Great stuff there. Then the chase in the Millennium Falcon is so impressive, where Rey starts off with like a very dodgy takeoff, destroying like the archway, which again is from Ralph McQuarrie concept art. But then there's this incredible like loop the Falcon does with the camera, like follows it all the way around and twists all the way around so it's not upside down anymore. Just an amazing shot. I think that was in the first teaser shot as well, in the teaser trailer. Then the Falcon almost skimming across the sand just adds a new dynamic to the action. Then the Falcon like flying inside the Star Destroyer is such a good idea. Really great visual idea, really slick stuff. And I just feel like JJ is so good with action scenes, bringing a lot of creativity to them, which he showed in, the Star Trek film which he rebooted. Certainly half of why he got the gig for this film. I like the Force dream sequence where Rey touches Luke's lightsaber. We seamlessly go from inside a corridor from a Star Destroyer to outside at night in the rain and get a glimpse of the Knights of Ren and a glimpse of the final battle on Starkiller Base in the snow. It's kind of reminiscent of when in Empire Luke pretends to fight Vader on Dagobah, and Vader's helmet comes off and reveals that it's Luke's head inside. So this kind of feels consistent with the new characters feeling the power of the Force for the first time, like messing with their heads a bit. I quite like that consistency there.
Yeah, I would say the whole her touching the lightsaber and having the Force vision, that's my favorite scene in the film. Just it's incredibly creative, and it just goes from one bit to the other, and it's I think it's a visually stunning couple of seconds where you're like, oh shit, wow, and it tells this entire story and hints at like possible, you know, outcomes for the end of the story. It's like, oh, maybe she's getting a glimpse into just everything, and you're not really making sense of it because she can't make sense of any of this. And I thought it was just done so incredibly well. No, you know, I don't want to talk really about the sequel, but it is disappointing that the Knights of Ren sort of suck in the last one. Like, they look so cool in this vision, and they're just shit in the last film. They're there to just pose and look intimidating and sell action figures, but they do nothing cool. I'm sorry.
They don't even have any lines.
Don't even have any lines. They are pointless. I really wish those guys, because I even thought they were the Royal Guards from the second one, were the Knights of Ren. They were cool. They were awesome. Why didn't they just stick around? Yeah. The Knights of Ren could have had that action scene.
Died, so.
Yeah. Well, you know, they could have had that action scene and survived. But I don't know. But, you know, I'm just saying they suck.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree there. Because I watched a lot of the films for the podcast in subtitles, I never noticed that Obi-Wan Kenobi from the first, Ewan McGregor, says the last line in that. This is your first steps or something, you know. That's him at the end. I was like, oh, cool. I never noticed that. And Yoda's in there as well. That was some nice touches. The moment in the snow on Starkiller Base when Luke's lightsaber is in the snow and Kylo Ren is trying to pull it out using the Force, but then flies right past him and lands right into Rey's hand. I was like, hell yeah. A great moment that gave me huge chills. The choreography of the fight is on purpose less complex and more emotional, more aggressive blows than trying to really be intricate like in the prequels. You know, I love the moment when Rey feels the Force and the breathing is more echoey and the score is stronger and the lightsaber sound effects are quieter in that moment. Just great framing on Daisy's face, and she opens her eyes. She's like, I got this. Yeah. And is now more of the aggressor. Just a really cool storytelling moment and great development for her character in action, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
What do you reckon about like the new like fighting style? It's more emotional and just more aggressive, I think. Obviously a lot slower and you know, in the prequels it's a lot faster.
I would say like thematically it's a good fight. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Even with him and Finn. I can't really say much of the choreography. Yeah, it is cool. It's fast paced and it's very aggressive. It feels like it's over too quickly. I will say that.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's over too quickly. It just feels like an epic setup for a fight and then some really cool poses and some really cool shots. Where again, I'm saying where they lock blades, you're like, oh, you know, that would be a cool poster. That would be a really cool poster. Her coming after him. That's an awesome poster.
Just a great visual of just having a lightsaber fight in the snow at night.
Yeah.
The red and blue reflecting in the snow just looks amazing.
I mean, the lighting looks great. And it's, again, not something we've seen before. But I will say, like, the choreography is a little disappointing, even on rewatches. You're like, it's over too quickly. It's just over too quickly.
I never really felt that, to be honest.
Well, I don't know. It's just kind of what I feel. It's like, I prefer a lot of the other ones, not even just in the prequels, but even in the originals, with the exception of, you know, the first one, which wasn't that good, but that was because they were just trying it out, you know, between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
But even all the other ones with Luke and Vader, you're like, holy shit, there's so much going on. There's so much choreography. And there's less so in this. It's very quick. Probably what a real lightsaber fight would be, like what a real sword fight would be. It's not... Real sword fights, if you've ever like heard about them or seen them or done some history about them, like they're not that extravagant. They're over pretty quick because, you know, a sword can like cut your arm off. So, you know.
That's why, like, the sword fights in the prequels, they feel very over choreographed.
I do think they are overly choreographed, yeah.
Because there's a moment in Revenge of the Sith when, like, Obi-Wan and Anakin are literally waving both lightsabers about and they don't even hit each other. I'm like, what are you doing? It's not a competition. Just fight.
Who's the coolest looking? Who can do the coolest swirl? Yeah. It's like, you lose. Anakin, no.
My favourite shot, actually, is during the battle around Maz Kanata's castle. There's an incredible one which starts on Finn shooting a stormtrooper. Then Poe swoops in with his black and orange X-Wing, taking out some TIE fighters in the distance and the stormtroopers in the foreground. And the camera tracks around, following Poe's X-Wing the whole time. Then Finn comes back into the foreground, shooting a stormtrooper. Then ends with Poe flying right over Finn. Just a really well choreographed shot, incorporating like ground action and aerial action. For me, the best action shot in the sequel trilogy. Just really great stuff from J.J. Abrams there.
So I would say the whole Maz Kanata fight, in my opinion, is like my favourite fight in the film. You know, it's just so epic. Unlike the X-Wing fight to take down Starkiller Base, you're completely right. It's incorporating it all. Here's some ground combat with our main cast and the and stormtroopers. You know, Han doing his stuff, Chewie doing his stuff, Finn doing his stuff. They're saved by the air cavalry, basically, just taking out TIE fighters, taking out people, and it's really cool. It's really, really cool. Yeah, I think that was my favorite fight scene.
Score for directing, Byers? What are you going for?
I'm gonna go an 8.5.
Yeah, I think this film is really impressively directed, to be honest. I think J.J. Abrams does this type of action, this sci-fi type of action, so well. Definitely the best action scenes in the sequel trilogy, all in this film for me. And even with the direction of the emotional stuff, really well designed with the sets and the lighting in the scene where Han Solo dies. That's really well put together in the directional sense as well. So yeah, I think I'll be a bit more generous. I think I'll go with an 8.7.
I also wish a lot of I like a lot of the action scenes, with the Millennium Falcon, with the one with Han. They're quite a lot, Han Solo fighting those gangs and the Maz Kanata Cantina and, in the Starkiller Base and Rey versus Kylo. I kind of wish they were a little longer, if that makes sense. So that's my only sort of thing. I think, they're going so good. I just wish, just pad them out just a bit more. And then I would have been more satisfied. But as they are, they're pretty good. I just wish the fight scenes were a little longer.
I think that's the thing with J.J. Abrams' action films, is the fact that the pacing is always really high. It is really quick. So you literally go from scene to scene so often with J.J. films.
Yeah. I think that's one of my problems, I think, with the directing, where I'm just like, man, I just want to be in this moment just a little more. Can't you do that? And you're like, this is good. Just give me a little more of this. Keep it on. But then it's like, shows some cool stuff and then moves to the next scene. And that's just a little annoying. But it's still good. Okay. It's still good.
So screenplay then. I quite like the idea of Finn's character, played by John Boyega in this film, a stormtrooper having a crisis of conscience and decides to help the resistance. But not only that, he decides to lie to Rey, pretending to be a resistance fighter. But when they get to Maz Kanata, he kind of freaks out a bit and admits to Rey that he was a stormtrooper and says all we can do is run against the First Order. But what brings him back is the fact that he gets caught up into the fight, plus his friendship with Rey. Seeing her being captured by Kylo gives him something to fight for. Whereas before he was running and surviving. It's a shame in the next films you just got the sense that the writers really didn't know what to do with Finn, especially in Rise of Skywalker. It's just a shame for John Boyega, really. He just has he has a great beginning arc, but then just tails off to nothing, really. Yeah. It's just a real shame.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I do think it's very unfortunate for his character. If I was kind of doing this, I would have either made him the main character. It's not necessarily like, I don't like Rey and Daisy, Ridley, or whatever the hell she's called. But I really like the idea of a stormtrooper becoming the good guy. And it's like one you've never seen before. And it kind of was something that was very, thematically, story-wise, just incredibly impressive. You're like, oh my God, they have the balls to do that? And a lot of the people that were saying, this film is a clone of A New Hope, which in many ways it is. That is the one thing that I think really stands out, is you have a good guy who is a stormtrooper. That hasn't been nowhere in the Star Wars film. And I just feel like, because he's a secondary character here, You don't think about it as much. And then he gets more and more sidelined through the rest of it.
Yeah, it's such a shame.
I think it's kind of an unfortunate thing, really, about this film. I think he should have been more of the focus, because then he would be the focus in the next couple of films. I just feel like it's the only truly, genuinely unique concept in this movie. You know, you've had heroes on desolate planets that didn't know they were special. You know, in Luke Skywalker, you've had Han and Leia in the other ones. You've had Chewie. You've had everything else. You've had a kind of Emperor-like figure in Snoke and a Darth Vader-like figure in Kylo Ren. But you haven't had somebody who's been on the bad side, been a stormtrooper turned to the good side. It's an incredibly unique idea. And I just feel it kind of just, kind of gets forgotten about, which is a shame. I kind of would have made him the main star. Or, if you want to make Rey the main star, sort of incorporate that into that as well.
In my opinion, I think he probably should have died in Rise of Skywalker, just to make it more of an emotional punch for Rey's character. I always kind of go through this in my head of like, what could they have done to make Rise of Skywalker better? It's just so it feels better in my head.
Yeah.
But then you kind of fall into, well, they're killing the black guy trope to further the plot. But
I think something could have been done with the fact that he is a stormtrooper. I just think it's such a big idea that, I don't think it gets fully explored. I would even say, even in this film, I think they hinted it that it could be fully explored, but they don't pay off on it. I think maybe if he did something like, in my opinion, like, he's a reformed stormtrooper. What if he convinces some of the other stormtroopers they don't actually have to follow this nonsense? Like, he's made it out of it. I mean, that could be using the concept of his character to further the plot. It's like, this is what he could bring to the table, actually convince stormtroopers not to follow the dark side, because, I mean, nobody else can convince a stormtrooper not to do that. They're kind of mindless drones.
And Rey has a similar, crisis of conscience after the Force dream sequence, and when Mars asks her to take up the lightsaber and become a Jedi, it kind of freaks her out a bit, and she's like, nope, screw this, I'm off, and runs away. But I think it's kind of a similar situation with Finn. The fight gets too big for them to run away from, and these characters at the start have nothing, but now they've befriended too many people to care about, especially BB-8, of course.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, cause obviously with Luke Skywalker in the original trilogy, he still has, his adopted family, he has something to lose, and obviously they get burned alive.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a little bit of a different spin there. In Star Wars, you've always got to have scenes where quivering officers have to speak to Darth Vader saying they fucked up and get force choked to death. And I like the different spin on it with Kylo Ren, where he just gets really angry and slashes the control panels with his lightsaber, and then drags the officer with the Force to his hand. That was kind of cool.
Yeah. I thought it was funny where they do a copy of that, like a reprise. I think it's always great to do that.
Yeah.
Dramatically. You do something serious and you can put a spin on it the second time. And I love the spin they put on that, where Rey has escaped and he just starts going to town on the her torture chair and on the whole room, and some stormtroopers are walking by and they just see all these sparks and all this metal fly out of the door, and they're just like, let's turn the fuck around. He is not in a good mood.
I remember that got a big laugh in the cinema that
was an incredible that was a very genuinely funny scene.
I think one moment where the film gave me major chills was when Kylo Ren is talking to something and says, "Forgive me, I feel it again, the pull to the light. Supreme Leader senses it. Show me again the power of the darkness, and I will let nothing stand in our way. Show me, grandfather, and I will finish what you started." Then you see Darth Vader's helmet all burnt up. Chills!
Yeah, that was pretty good.
But what's interesting about that little monologue is the line right at the start, "Forgive me, I feel it again, the pull to the light." It's just interesting that this character is very conflicted still in the short time we've known him. He's not a fully fledged Dark Lord yet. The pull to the dark and light side is always there for someone that's Force sensitive, and it's not always the pull of the dark side all the time. And we've never really seen that before, where the light side is tempting too, through guilt, I suppose, in this case. And I think the only time that's happened before was when literally Darth Vader throws Palps down the big hole in Jedi. So I thought that was a really interesting thing that they explore in this film and in Last Jedi as well.
Yeah. Just his inner conflict and turmoil in being a bad guy, especially because, you know, when he's introduced, he's evil. You know, he massacres a village. You're like, there is no redemption for this guy.
Yeah.
But the idea that Han and Leia are trying to get him to come back, and even he's feeling like he should, is pretty good. And I do like the scene with him and Han Solo. Han Solo's unfortunate demise at the end of, you know, an era for the character. And I like that, where he doesn't shoot his son or anything like that, you know, the evil Kylo Ren, but tries to talk him out of it, tries to get him to come to the light.
Yeah.
And you think he's almost succeeding. And like Ben is, or, you know, Kylo is like, you know, please help me, you know.
Yeah.
It's like anything, and then he stabs him. But I do like the fact that it's, you know, Han Solo's son and all this, and, you know, it plays on the trope of Darth Vader, and I thought that was great, and the character of Kylo Ren is quite interesting. But I do wish, this is just a small gripe, I forgot how early they reveal that he is Ben Solo. They do it very early on. I found it was quite early. It was quite early, of like where they discover Han Solo's on the Millennium Falcon, and then Snoke just pretty much says to him, "Yeah, that's, you know, your father's involved in this." I was like, "Shit, okay, that's really early on to say that he's you know, Han Solo's son." I would have
bother me too much.
I know in retrospect it's kind of obvious. Almost everybody could work it out. In my personal opinion, watching this again, I'm like, I cannot believe they revealed that so early. I would have pushed that shit like way back.
But I think what was the killer line is the emotional one. It's not that reveal. It's when Han shouts Ben. You don't know what his name is. You know he's his son, but at that point, you don't know what he's called. And the fact that he's called Ben, you know, after Ben Kenobi in A New Hope, that's the gut punch bit, which is really a great reveal there in the writing. I think the one bittersweet thing I have in this film, and certainly there are two things that people have major issues with in this film. It's pretty much like the same story structure as Star Wars A New Hope. For me, it kind of feels like more of a remix of A New Hope. It's not beat for beat like A New Hope. They kind of change things around, and they have kind of the similar story beats, but at different times, and kind of some of them are squished together, and different characters have different things to do. But the other one is the fact that Luke Skywalker isn't in this film, really, until the end. It does feel a little disappointing, but again, I did get the feels, but not really as strong with the ones with Han showing up and Han dying and Rey holding the lightsaber. You know, it was still a cool moment, but how do you reintroduce like the greatest hero in cinema history, in my opinion? I think the decision not to have any dialogue as well was a wise one, just to leave you hanging about what Luke's true emotions are right now was a great cliffhanger. I would say that, but because certainly when I watched it for the first time in the first film, I was like, well, come on, Luke? Can we have Luke now, please? You know. Is that it? Oh.
I think it's a great teaser to get you to watch the next one. Well, everybody's searching for Luke. You want to see Luke. Yeah. Everybody's talking about Luke. Give me goddamn Luke. And then when you kind of lose hope of ever seeing Luke, they finally get to Luke. Yeah. And you just see him. And then it's... and you're like, God damn it.
Damn it.
I got to buy a ticket to see Luke. Been waiting all, 2 hours to see Luke, I would say I do actually kind of understand the criticisms that it's quite similar. My thing as well is, and to this day, I still don't really get it. Like, if it's going to be similar, why are there changes? Do you get? I'm going to try and explain. Yeah. Okay. So, this isn't the Empire. Yeah. This is not the Sith.
No.
This is the Knights of Ren, and it's the First Order. My thing is why. Like, why change their names? Like, just why bother? I mean, it's like, as far as I'm concerned, the First Order looks exactly like the Empire. They use stormtroopers. They look very similar. They've got similar goals. They've got basically the same ideology. The Sith as well, they're not here, but you've got the Knights. You've got, the Knights of Ren and Supreme Leader Snoke.
I agree. It does make things a bit confusing.
Snoke is like the Emperor, and, the Knights of Ren and Kylo are just like the Sith. It's like, why make a different organization that does the same thing?
Yeah.
And then, instead of the Death Star or Death Star 2 or the Death Star 3.0 or whatever, you've got Starkiller Base, which again is essentially the same weapon. So my thing is not so much that it's kind of the same, it's a similar film, which it kind of is, and as you were saying, there are differences enough, but it's like, why do you need to introduce a new faction that is the same as the previous faction? To me, it's a bit weird. I think they could have just said the Empire. They could have just termed it the Empire and just termed it the Sith.
Yeah, I think what they were going for, because obviously at the end of Return of the Jedi, they completely they pretty much defeated the Empire. Obviously, there were remnants of the Empire left, but they kind of, with those remnants, they kind of rebuilt to something completely new. I think that was what they were going for. They didn't want to be known as the previous Empire. They wanted to be like something bigger and more dangerous.
Yeah. This is just the one thing that irks me. It's like, if it's going to be different, then make it different. That's my thing. If it's a new faction that's meant to be bigger and badder, don't make them look anything like the old faction.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I think, in my way, either they should have kept it as the Empire, because then it makes sense to have stormtroopers in my head and in everybody else's head who's younger and older generations. It won't confuse them. Because, nowadays we talk about, stormtrooper, which stormtrooper, the Empire or the First Order? It's like, dude, they look almost exactly the fucking same, With the last one, they did a stupid thing of introducing another goddamn faction. They evolved into the Final Order. It's so silly.
The Sith troopers. I'm like, that makes no sense.
Yeah. It just got a bit ridiculous. But I'm just saying, like, if you're going to make them similar, if you're going to make almost everything similar, they're using the same weapons, they're using the same tactics, they have the same ideology, and they look the same. Just call them the same thing. And if you want to introduce a new, bigger bad that you want to make them different, then visually and ideologically, just make them different. So that's always irked me about the sequel trilogy. It can't decide what it wants to be. It can't decide if it wants to introduce something new or to cater to something old. And now you've got this halfway house where it's a new threat, but in old clothes. And to me, that never sat well with me.
I think that's why the whole Knights of Ren thing was so disappointing. Because it felt like Kylo was like creating like his own dark religion.
Yeah, Sith organization or whatever.
But it just comes to nothing, and it's just like, what?
Because of this problem where it's new in old clothing, then eventually you had this problem with the last film. People are like, well, either introduce something new or bring back the old. They brought back the old, but then it adds more confusing. Because you're like, why the hell bring it back the old if you've got this new thing that looks exactly like the old?
Yeah, why the hell Palpatine is in Rise of Skywalker, I have no idea. But they still could have made that work as well, but they really didn't. I'm just like, lightning doesn't work on lightsabers, dude!
Yeah, just learn. This has happened before. I think that's my problem with the sequel trilogy as a whole, and I do think this one is the best, and there were bigger problems much later on how they should end it. But I think it's just one of these issues of they've just got too much the same setup, too much is the same from the originals, and if it's going to be the same, just make it the same. And I just think they wrote themselves into a corner of, should we cater to nostalgia or should we show people something new? And they didn't know really what to do, and it kind of just turned into a bit of a garbled mess. So I do like this as a setup of a film. I do think one of my major issues, which I still say to this day, is either they should have, I'm saying it to death now, but either they should have kept it the same or really introduced something new. But if I've never watched Star Wars before, this is pretty good.
There are some cool lines in this film. This is the ship that made the Kessel Run in 14 parsecs. 12!
Yeah.
From Han. He almost killed me 6 times. Chewie pulls Finn towards him by the throat. Which is fine!
Yeah.
That was funny.
I like when BB-88 does his thumbs up.
Oh, yeah.
Where they nod and a wink that he's in the Resistance, and he puts a sly thumbs up, and BB-8 lights up his lighter to be like a little thumb.
That was cool.
That was
I love the puppetry of BB-8, just generally in this film. Just really a great concept for a character.
I really like whenever they use puppets and like real things, especially in Maz Kanata's Cantina, where you're like, all of these things look real. All of these creatures, all these little ones, all these big ones. Like, well, they are real.
Have you got a favourite line then?
You go first and I'll try and remember something.
I think mine is simply Chewie, we're home, when we first see Han Solo and Chewbacca when they get back to the Falcon. That's just a great nostalgic line.
I love all of Chewie's lines. I especially like, and then when he said,
Yes.
it's amazing. He has the best lines.
I need a weapon. You have one.
Yeah, that was cool. Traitor! That's always a great one.
I will remove these restraints and leave the cell door open, and I'll drop my weapon.
yeah, that was funny.
From Daniel Craig.
yeah. James Bond in space.
And whatever you do, don't stare at what? Any of it.
Yeah, that was a good one. If you live long enough, you see the same eyes in different people. I think it's a good line. But also it's kind of strange because that's essentially what this film is. It is kind of a refresher, kind of a tale for a new generation on the old. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is it's kind of like this continuation / sort of soft retelling of the old. I think that line perfectly, encapsulates that.
So what score are you going with for screenplay?
I'm not going to go that high because I do find some problems in it. Yeah, I think there was some missed potential in a lot of things, but genuinely good, genuinely quite entertaining. So I'm going to go with a 7, like a straight 7.
A straight 7? Okay. I don't have a huge problem with the fact that they kind of riff on A New Hope. For me, that is kind of a nice way of introducing new audiences to Star Wars, and yet keeping kind of some great nostalgia for audiences obviously know Star Wars, which there are a lot of them. So it doesn't bother me too much. I do feel like it's a missed opportunity to not have Luke more in this film. That is slightly frustrating. So I will go like a 8.1.
All right.
I'm not going to be that harsh. I think it's still pretty good writing. I just really like the way they use Han Solo in this. I think it's really, really great story for him. So acting then, I feel like the acting from Daisy Ridley is a bit cringe in the opening exchanges with BB-8 when she says, "Don't follow me, town is that way." And it just sounds not very convincing.
No.
But it might be the material she was working with, but...
It's like an early 2000s video game. Yeah. It just sounds really strange.
Yeah, I did feel that the first time I watched it, and even now, I'm like, still not great, that bit. Yeah. But other than that, Daisy Ridley is great in the film. Just that initial scene isn't amazing.
I would say she only kind of really gets into her own quite later. I would even say this actually with the script, if I was going back, the humour for me didn't land at the start of the movie. It just felt like they were trying to be funny. At a certain point, it becomes funny. And then it just feels like there are attempts at humour. And then even with some of the acting, but especially I would say just Daisy Ridley, at the start, I'm really not buying it. I think basically from Maz Kanata's Cantina, I think where she's got a lot of emotion to deal with.
She's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, when she's got some emotion to deal with, then I think she does really well. If she's got to be conflicted or sad or angry, if she's got to do emotion, I think she gets, the second half, that's where she excels. But I think when she's just got to do basic dialogue, small talk, to just do little things, it just seems weird. It just doesn't seem right.
Because I think, weirdly, her best performance is in Rise of Skywalker, for me.
Yeah.
It's just a shame her best performance is in the worst film. But there we go.
True.
I kind of love the subtle acting from Harrison Ford when he says in The Falcon, "It's true. The Force, the Jedi, all of it. It's all true." You can just see all the pride is all on his face. It gave me chills in that moment again. A lot of chills in this podcast.
Turn on your lightsaber then. Warm yourself up.
The amazing classic score helps a lot too, to be honest. And in the first Star Wars film, Han Solo was pretty much in the same spot when he was denying it all, denying it was true to Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's just a really nice callback, but he's completely the opposite now. It's the Jedi's all real. And the moment when Han Solo and Leia meet again, and it is a really touching moment that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Great moment. It's funny as well with C-3PO interrupts their moment and says, "Goodness, Han Solo, it is I, C-3PO." Which made me laugh out loud. And Harrison Ford is brilliant. His face is amazing. Harrison Ford does grumpy and pissed off like no one else.
Oh god, yeah.
Just so funny. Yeah, we kind of touched on it a little bit. Han Solo's death scene is brilliantly acted from Harrison Ford, and especially from Adam Driver, who plays Kylo Ren. When he says the Supreme Leader is wise, he sounds like a spoiled child being accused of lying. And then when he says, I'm being torn apart, I want to be free of this pain, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Will you help me? Emotion starts to come into his voice, but not too much, because he's trying to hide that he's going to kill Han, but the emotion is still genuine a little bit because it's his father at the end of the day. So for me, Adam Driver pitches the performance perfectly, but the way Harrison Ford touches Adam's face as he falls to his death is just such a great emotional detail that always gets to me. I didn't cry. I nearly did the first time, but also I kind of wish Chewie went on more of an emotional rampage. Not just shooting a few stormtroopers. I wish he threw one and ripped some arms off, get really fucking pissed off. Don't just kill a few.
Yeah. Eat them.
Go nuts on some. This is your best friend you've been with pretty much your whole life.
Rip their guts out and strangle another stormtrooper with it. Yeah.
I just felt that was a little bit dissatisfying.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what film I saw recently where a hero died and the other guy just went fucking ham on everybody. But I love those scenes when shit like that happens. But yeah, it wasn't really like all that.
Have you got a favourite performance then?
I think I'm going to go Harrison Ford.
Yeah, I'm going to go with him as well.
Yeah.
I really like John Boyega as well as Finn. He really goes for it in some of the scenes.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
He works really well with Harrison Ford. The comedy works really well between those two when they're on Starkiller Base.
Yeah,
he's like, why are you doing this? And points. And then, he's like doing the head thing. He's like, what are you doing?
Funny.
No, Rey is there.
Yeah, I like where, he discovers he's full of shit and he's like, you said you knew how to work this thing. I lied. I'm only caring about Rey and stuff. He goes, billions of people are counting on us. He's like, we'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works.
So score Barras, what are you going to go for acting?
Yeah, the acting is good. And with Daisy Ridley, it's a shame. I think she's a good actress. And there are parts of this which are, really good for her. I would say, when she meets Kylo Ren, she's very conflicted in Maz Kanata's cantina. At the end, when she discovers her true self and all that stuff, that stuff is great. I just don't think she's up to par at the beginning, and it's so distracting. It's such a shame.
But I do feel like the material doesn't help as well. I would add that.
Yeah, I suppose the material doesn't help. Yeah. But I don't know, because it's in the earlier parts, even when she's talking with John Boyega, I just feel like he can do small talk better than she can. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I guess I get the feeling that because she was a complete unknown going into this, I don't think she had the confidence or the star clout, if you will, to say, hang on, JJ, I don't think this is working. I don't think this sounds very good. I just feel like with someone else, they probably would have said that.
Yeah, they might have said something like, listen, I don't think that's the best take I can do. Can I, can I do it a couple more times?
Say something different.
Yeah, can I see it a different way? Can I do it this way? Yeah, I'll give her that. So, but yeah, where she does really good, when she mind interrogates Ren, that was really good. So she does some really good stuff, and Harrison Ford is brilliant. John Boyega is really good. Yeah, I'm gonna give this maybe an 8.3.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'll go the same actually. Daisy Ridley's a really good actress, but I think she's just really getting into the role in this first film. But yeah, Harrison Ford is like he never left.
Yeah,
the shoes of Han Solo.
Exactly. He's just falling into a nice comfy slipper, Yeah, it's
definitely.
Yep, it's still damn comfy.
Right, let's add up the scores then for Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Not a great score. Damn it, Boaz.
I've let the side down.
Star Wars: The Force Awakens gets 48.9. 7 for screenplay.
You're never going to let me live that down, are you? You're just going to keep bringing it up for years to come.
Right, Mr. Encyclopedia Man, what is your film for long-awaited sequels?
Mine is The Incredibles 2.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was this, about 14-year gap, I think?
Yeah, it is.
In the first
something
one.
Like that.
So why did you pick Incredibles 2?
Well, there's a few reasons. One of the most obvious being you had done The Incredibles during our... no, who picked The Incredibles?
I did, yeah.
Was that me? That was you. That was you. Yeah, I picked X-Men
No,
too.
it was me. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. So anyway, you picked The Incredibles for superhero team films, which was a great choice, by the way. It's a really good film. And it just kind of reminded me. And I remember, oh shit, I watched a few years ago, I went to the cinema to watch Incredibles 2. And that was a hell of a shock that they were making an Incredibles 2, and that they had made one. And it was just like, what in the hell? Here's the thing, it's like, in a lot of long-awaited sequels, most of these aren't like films that I grew up with. Do you know what I mean? Like if you did a sequel to like Tron Legacy. I watched Tron Legacy. I'd never watched Tron. This is way before my time. And there are many other films that are like that, where you're like, when I was a kid with Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, I hadn't watched the originals. Like I was way too young. So again, it's not like a long-awaited sequel. No, I watched the originals after I had watched the prequels. After I had basically been waiting to watch all the prequels, then I watched the original.
I had seen the originals like many, many times because my dad had them on VHS tape. Not just the originals, the theatrical cuts. My dad has on VHS tape. He still has them. Probably shouldn't be saying this right now because they're probably worth millions right now. But because you literally can't get the original cuts on DVD.
Either fans are going to raid your dad's house, or George Lucas is going to blow up your dad's house. He somehow does not want anybody to watch his original version of the movies.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's crazy. That is really crazy. So, I mean, this is one of the few ones where, I watched The Incredibles as a teenager. I was, I had all my faculties. Yeah. I'm basically kind of
a demon baby child.
And, they come out with another one. Yeah, and they come out with another one like so many years later. You're like, Jesus Christ, that's crazy. And also, it's quite interesting because it's one of the few like long-awaited sequels where there isn't a time jump. There isn't a, this is happening several years later, or even most sequels that, they're only like, they're released like the next year. There's always a time jump of a few days, a few weeks. What I found particularly interesting when watching this film in the cinema is there's a 14-year gap, in our time between the previous film and this film. But there is no gap at all in the chronology of the film. I find that crazy. I've never seen many sequels that do that, where the next one, it hits the ground running. And this is even most sequels that are, they're shot 2 years after the fact, and there's always some gap.
Well, you can do that with animation, to be fair. Not so much live action.
Yeah, you can do that, because, people don't age. Yeah, exactly. All of the character models don't age. It's much harder to do it in real life where, several years have passed and you've got to pretend it's that same second.
Yeah, but they did have to recast the actor who did voiced Dash, though, because I guess his voice was too deep 14 years later.
Yeah, no, I'd imagine his balls have dropped like decades ago.
So what happens in Incredibles 2?
So, as I said before, The Incredibles 2 begins like just straight after the end of The Incredibles 1. Where they're attacked by the Underminer.
The Underminer!
The Underminer! So the Underminer attacks the city. The family put on their masks, like, for the first time. It's that bit at the end of the first film. And they fight the Underminer. So you carry on straight, basically, into their fight with him. The fight, even though it's set up epically at, like, the end of the first one, does not go well. Their first, dealing with a superhero syndrome as a family. And it leads to mass destruction of the city, and the Underminer gets away, and nobody is happy, because, heroes are still illegal at this point. The first film didn't change anything. They're given, like, not very much money, like, the government has shut down any program to help, retired supers, so they have about just enough funds for 2 weeks in a motel. But they were seen by this man called Winston Diva, that's the one. Who sees them, like, save the day, and he wants to film them saving the day. Well, film one of them, which ends up being Elastigirl. He wants to get her to save the day on camera, and she's picked because Mr. Incredible is considered, like, too brutish. Like, he ends up destroying most of the things he tries to protect, so he's not the best candidate to convince people to make superheroes legal. Yeah. Which I found just kind of, it is kind of an interesting choice to take this, because the first film was very much from Mr. Incredible's point of view, him wanting to relive the glory days and be a superhero again, and it was his villain from his, past. And then it's interesting for this film, it's Elastigirl who's called up to action. It's her film, basically. It's a villain mainly from her point of view, her story. Yeah. So anyway, she comes back on the scene and is presented with a new villain called Screenslaver, who can hypnotize people through TV screens. She does a good job saving the world from Screenslaver, becomes incredibly popular and famous. The government is going to change its law on superheroes. At the same time, Bob is trying to deal with the kids and Jack and everything, and he's finding it very difficult to cope.
Doesn't have enough cookies.
He doesn't have enough cookies, yeah. So anyway, cut a long story short, it turns out the Screenslaver is Winston Diva. It's his sister, and she wants superheroes illegal. Like, he wants them legalized and is doing this to build publicity. She hates superheroes. She doesn't want them legalized. She wants to completely ruin their reputation so they're never legalized. And, there's a huge team up at the end, and they beat her, and all is good.
So, what do you make of this one? Better than the first one, or do you prefer the first one?
I think I prefer the first film, but I still really like this film.
I think I agree with you. I think I prefer the first film. There's a lot of great stuff in this sequel, but there's one thing that really, really bothers me, which I really, really didn't like. We'll get onto that in screenplay. You probably can guess what it is, but it really just that's so disappointing. Yeah, on the whole, this is a really good film, despite that. So, directing then for Incredibles 2, the opening action scene is very cool. As this film is 14 years after the first one, you can definitely see more details in the animation compared to the first film. Like, the lighting and animation makes the characters look really nice and slick, with the Underminer's vehicle coming up, and the details of the smoke and the rubble look really impressive. Also, with the advancements of Pixar's technology, you already get the sense that they are expanding the superheroes' abilities. Violet fires out two shield blasts that look really cool, and Elastigirl's abilities felt so much more fluid. It was like she was like Spider-Man at times when she's swinging around the city with her stretchy arms. Just a really impressive opening action sequence for me.
And basically incorporated into that is a pass the parcel sort of thing going on with the baby. Of no, you have the baby, I'll help out. No, you guys have the baby. I love that. I thought that was great.
I think one of my favourite action scenes, though, is I love the action scene where Elastigirl chases the new monorail train on her new bike. Really satisfying to watch that. Similar to the dash scene in the first film, but feels just as dynamic for me because we're in a city environment, not a jungle, where Dash was just whizzing past fairly similar environments, and it's all at a blur. Whereas with this in the city, you're in the city, so you have cars and buildings whiz past the camera, which just kind of sticks out more in the chase, creating more danger. They use the environment of the city more to create the dynamic action and not always a blur.
She has to really reorientate herself and everything she's doing. I love that bit where she goes on one of the cranes and then spins the back end of the bike to launch herself higher over a building. And you're like, whoa, Jesus.
The bike splits into two.
There's so much going on. And it's, as you said, the bike can disconnect so she can go around things in kind of, unusual ways.
Also, she makes mistakes throughout the chase. It's not seamless at times. She gets clipped by a car. The bottom half of the bike falls down the side of the train and hits the window. And it's like she's not always in full control at times, which adds more jeopardy to the scene and kind of, as I said before in that episode in comic book team films, it kind of gives the character and the scene a more grounded feel, even though it is animation.
Yeah.
It just gives it a more cinematic feel, not just any other cartoon, I really enjoyed the action scene with Frozone in the house when he's trying to protect the kids. The use of Void with the portals was always fun to see in the movie, where she tricks Dash at one point, just going running through the same room. The hypnotized bad guys do actually work together really well and make it really difficult for Frozone and the kids. And when Frozone gets hypnotized, it's fairly unexpected because you think he's going to get out of it somehow, surely, but he doesn't. So it's kind of a great unexpected moment there.
I really like that scene where all the heroes are mind controlled and try to take them, and just as you said, Frozen's trying to stop them, and the portal chick throughout the film, she's awesome, and her power looks incredible. I would say I was a little disappointed. It's kind of like when we say this about we said this about the first Incredibles, how like the last action scene wasn't like the standout. And then I thought what was kind of disappointing even in this film is you have all of these mind-controlled heroes, and when they assault the house, my God, it's a visual spectacle. Yeah. But then they take them out really easy at the end. It just felt like, what? You're like, okay, epic, like just take them all out. It just, I don't know. It wasn't as cool for me as the house one. Not saying it wasn't cool. It just
they didn't know at that time that the goggles were the thing that were.
Yeah, no, I know that. I'm just saying, like, if you compare them, I'm not saying like some sort of thematic whatever. But if you just compare the scenes, I think it's a cooler scene. It's a cooler action scene at the house than it is. It's still cool, but then when they fight them on the ship, it's just over too quickly. It's not as much going on. In my opinion, maybe I'm right.
Don't agree, to be honest. I
you
think
don't agree?
The one in the house is over very quickly, whereas the one on the boat, there's lots of different things going on. Yeah, you have the segments where the superheroes are hypnotized with the glasses, but then there's another sequence where the heroes are without the glasses and help the Incredibles family take down Evelyn Weaver in the jet. So there's lots of different things going on, and it keeps a nice pace to it with the action, a lot of varied action in the last bit. So I think this sequel definitely improves on the fact that you have, for me, the best action scenes at the end of this film compared to the first film. It's the dash scene, which we talked about last time.
I do think the characters do play off of each other a lot better than the first film in action scenes, using their powers to complement each other. Especially, actually, we were just talking about the Void Girl, but whenever she's in there, I mean, she just makes the action just much more incredible because she can, whatever they do, she can like redirect things to other places. I think that shit is amazing.
Did you ever play the game Portal?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's essentially that. She's thinking with portals.
Yeah, that was cool. I love that game. But the film utilizes Violet's powers a bit more compared to the first film. I always felt in the first film Violet was the one that was kind of sidelined a bit, certainly with her abilities. But I think with this film, they bring her to the fore a bit more. The fight she has with Void was really creative and fun to watch with the portals. Violet gets more to do with her invisibility, where she sneaks around the boat a bit. But obviously, by focusing on Violet more and Jack as well, Dash gets very little to do action-wise in this film.
Yeah, true.
Which I think is fair because he gets that incredible action scene in the first one, so I'm not too bothered by that.
I think you're kind of right. It's like he was already, I mentioned it before, he was the MVP, the most valuable player in the first one. Maybe it's right that they tone him down a bit, because let everybody else shine.
Yeah.
And, there's only so much you can do with making running around really fast look cool, I mean, Jack was awesome. I like Jack. I liked his fight with the raccoon. I thought that was fucking hilarious.
He is my favourite character, Jack in this film.
Yeah, same. Jack. But yeah, his fight with the raccoon, I thought that was awesome. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, every scene that involves Jack and his many powers is my favourite scene, to be fair.
Yeah.
Because he simply has all the powers.
He has all the powers. He's a greedy hog of a hero. He's got everything.
And the way he uses them is so creative in the film. Like the fight between him and his arch nemesis, the raccoon, is amazing. The way he becomes the Human Torch in this menacing wide shot is so awesome and funny.
Yeah.
And then he uses like the laser eyes on him, which is cool. And then later, when he sneezes, like launches himself in the air like a rocket, is amazing. But I think my favourite moment is when he's in the air vent with Violet and Dash on the boat, and one of the bad guys tries to crush them. And in there, Jack becomes a giant baby and sits on them. It's so funny. And then runs off like the Hulk. Just brilliant comedy there.
Yeah, that was amazing. I think in a sequel they should just let him do everything. Just throw the baby at the villain.
I don't need my family. I'll do this.
They really don't need anybody. Do whatever. I like when they used him as a gun. That was funny. When they got like a controller, like a universal remote.
Jack, lasers.
Yeah. No firing the baby in the house. Yeah, that's a great line.
Have you got a favourite scene then, or favourite scene with Jack?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it actually to him fighting the raccoon. I can keep watching that scene like a lot.
Just the animations of Jack looking really angry at the raccoon is hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So score for me for directing on Incredibles 2. I think it probably is an improvement. It's a tough one.
I think it is an improvement on the first one. It's one of those cases of just leveling up where you're like, how do you make it more dramatic? Yeah. How do you make it more action-packed?
Yeah, so I'll go an 8.9, I think. Just really great animation. I think the standouts are Elastigirl, Jack, and Violet, definitely. They utilize those three amazingly.
Yeah. And from the villain / not kind of affiliated team, Void.
The Void, yeah.
That's definitely the best new character that they power character that they introduced.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe like a 9.
Cool.
Just how technically impressive the scenes were.
Right, screenplay then. It's interesting with the first film where you have like the amazing twist on the superhero genre where superheroes are illegal and have to go into hiding. The plot of the first film is the Pars have to come out of hiding to save the city from Syndrome, of which they do, and the public are cheering them on at the end, but the political situation never actually changed in the first film. But after they defeat the Underminer, the political situation has gotten worse. Like the middlemen and their agents have been handed their P-45s. The government have no control over superheroes anymore.
They've stopped trying to shelter them or help them in any way now.
So Brad Bird and co. don't have to be clever with the plot, because this illegal superhero plot was still a big loose end from the first film. So the story from the first film never really finished, so it was just a natural sequel
progression
that they can go into. It's just a shame we had to wait 14 years, but there we go.
Yeah.
So I always got the sense in the first film that it was kind of an incomplete story. There was always more to explore.
Yeah, because, they didn't get like a pardon from helping with Syndrome or anything like that. So, yeah, it did just kind of, I do agree with you.
And when the three superheroes meet this new tycoon, Winston Deaver, played by Bob Odenkirk, I quite liked how they decided to go with Elastigirl as the superhero to relaunch the perception of superheroes, not Mr. Incredible. One, in the script, there's a funny use of feminism where Bob is like, well, it should be me, of course, because, and doesn't want to explain it without insulting his wife. And 2, Mr. Incredible is just too much of an insurance risk. Because he just destroys everything. So it's just a really clever, funny way to have Elastigirl be the main focus instead of Mr. Incredible in the main plot.
Yeah, and even initially, she doesn't really want to do it.
Yeah.
Because she's always the responsible one. And even in the first film, she's always, tugging away from, like, trying to do superheroics. We need to keep our head down. We need to just, be calm. But, I like even that Bob is the one that he doesn't really want her to do this. He doesn't want it to be her film. But she has to do this so he can do this.
Yeah.
So that's why he's supportive. So he does, like, she's like, I'm not sure. And I love that scene, like, they're at home. You're not sure? Come on, you need to do this, Otherwise, like, we're basically screwed, We've got two weeks to find a job. And I love the little exchange of, like, he's basically gritting his teeth. You can do it. It's going to be amazing if you do it. You'll be fantastic at this, honey. And then just before he goes to bed, so you do this so I can do it better, Yeah.
For me, the one really disappointing thing about the film is the fact that the identity of Screenslaver is not difficult at all to work out. That is Evelyn Deaver, the sister of the tycoon. There's a scene where the Pars and Frozone meet the Deavers, and Winston Deaver explains how their father and mother were murdered by robbers because he relied on the superhero hotline to save them, but they were exiled that night, and Evelyn says they would have survived if they went to a safe room. So the film immediately establishes that Evelyn is not a fan of superheroes. So then when Elastigirl is tracking Screenslaver, he does this very long voiceover as he's taking over a broadcast. And halfway through, he literally says, "You want superheroes to protect you and make yourself ever more powerless in the process, while you tell yourself you're being looked after." And I was like, oh, okay, it's Evelyn then. It's obvious. Yeah. And she's a techie person. It's definitely her. It couldn't be more obvious in the script. Exactly. And I don't know if they were trying to hide this line in such a long voiceover. I don't know. I don't see why Screenslaver can't be a completely separate character, but Elastigirl moving through the city was quite awesome. But
I completely agree with that. I mean, like, for example, like in the first one, Syndrome is someone from Bob's past, right?
Yeah.
And when he comes around, that's kind of a reason to obscure his identity. But it's not like he's one of Bob's co-workers, or it's not a mystery who Syndrome is, yeah? He'll come out and he's like, I have an attachment to your past. That's a surprise. But do you know what I mean? It is kind of strange to have this as a mystery film of a villain's identity, and to make it so blatantly obvious. It's like, I think you're right. It can only be one person. She's trying to figure out who it is. The audience is trying to figure out who it is. You have very few characters that are actually working with her besides her family. So it's not going to be her family. It's going to be one of two characters, basically. It's either going to be
Winston Deaver or Evelyn Deaver.
And it can't be Winston, because you're like... Actually, it would have been more of a surprise if it was Winston.
Yeah.
But so that's where I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot. If they did the reveal that it was Winston, I think I'd be more surprised. It would still be kind of like it's been done. Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy that's obviously very friendly is the bad guy. But at least it would be a little bit more surprising than the person who is the tech genius, who doesn't like superheroes, is very snarky. Yeah, of course she's going to be the one that, does this. Like, the only thing that's meant to throw you off is the fact that it looks like a male, but she's a female. But,
yeah,
that's just silly. That's just silly. You can pre-record shit.
I can understand that this is a Disney film at the end of the day, and you don't want to make it too complicated, but come on, they made it ridiculously obvious.
They made it very easily.
What they could have done is made Screenslaver a separate character and be like a sympathizer for Evelyn's emotional state. Screenslaver manipulates Evelyn's emotions to help him out or whatever. Kind of have that kind of angle. So she's kind of suffering as well. Don't make her like an evil character. Make her like a victim character that she's been forced to help Screenslaver.
Yeah. And, and then you could have, like, maybe she's got to make the decision of whether to, go against him or whatever. But, there's things you could do. There are different things you could do with her character. But, she was fairly obvious. One of the good things, really, maybe about it is that they could have more interaction, her and Elastigirl, that they could talk more, I suppose, not in a supervillain context, about their philosophies without, being, I don't know. Yeah, maybe, but again, it's not necessary.
But I think I enjoyed like the Bob Parr storyline more, where he's struggling to look after his family. He thinks they changed math or maths in this country, and struggles to help Dash with his homework. Struggles to look after Jack because he has all the powers conceivably imagined. But I think the most interesting and touching struggle for Bob is with Violet and her boyfriend's situation, because Tony saw her without her mask on. Bob gets Decker to wipe Tony's memory, so Violet gets really mad about that, and Bob tries to solve it really badly by going to the restaurant where he works and embarrasses Violet really badly.
Yeah. Who shoots out so much water out of her nose.
And then when Bob gets so tired, comes back from dropping off Jack at Edna's place, and Bob apologizes to Violet by saying, "I'm used to knowing what the right thing is to do, but now I'm not sure anymore. I just want to be a good dad. It's quite an emotional moment. I did get the feels in that moment a little bit. And I think they tackle the family dynamics better in this film, whereas the main plot is not as good. So it's kind of roles reversed. In the first film, the main plot is amazing, whereas the family struggles is a bit more of a sideline subplot, whereas they're kind of more equaled out in this film. But
yeah,
the main plot is certainly not as good in the sequel. But what's great about the script is that when Helen, Frozone, and then finally Bob get hypnotized, you're like, oh crap, the kids are just left to save the day. So the kids have to save the day, not the parents, which is definitely the best twist in this film. And all the best action is in the final act, which you kind of touched on, which is what makes the action film so satisfying, as we've talked about in Hot Fuzz. Not necessarily all working together, but lots of things going on with lots of characters. And I think my favourite bit was when Void tries to get Elastigirl up to the jet, but they don't make it simple. They make it look, really challenging for Void to get Elastigirl on that jet,
Yeah, that was good. I really like that.
Again, there's some great lines in this film. I think there are better ones in the first one, but there's some good ones. Like right at the start from Mr. Incredible, where he's like, Underminer, we meet again, while being sucked into the money-sucking machine.
Yeah, that was funny.
Num num cookie, cha-cha, one num num. Where Bob is trying to find Jack in the like sixth dimension or something.
Yeah, I like the one where Edna Mode, he takes her to Edna Mode. She's like, I'm not a babysitter, Robert. How could you ask us this? And then he Jack like turns into Edna and then fires off like a rocket. And then before he lands on the ground, she tries to save him and he can fly. And she's like, my God, yes.
Yeah, she says, I am not a baby person, Robert. I have no baby facilities. I am an artist.
Yeah.
The flame retardant is blackberry lavender, darling. Effective, edible, and delicious.
I think it's also great when he comes back to see her and the Jack is walking just like her, but instead of a cigarette, he's got like a candy stick.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that.
That's amazing.
To uncrush is silly. Why uncrush?
Oh yeah, he goes, what would you do if I asked you to unpunch someone?
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Makes no sense.
You got a favourite line then?
Oh yeah, math is math.
Yeah, that little rant he goes on.
Yeah.
Mine is when Bob finds out Jack has powers, and after fighting the raccoon, Bob says, you have powers! Yeah, baby! Then there's not a scratch on you. Did you go through the locked door? Are those powers yours? You can multiply like rabbits and go right through any solid... Ah, crap.
Yeah.
It's great. Great voice acting there.
And then he just displays everything. He's like, oh, he's like,
yeah.
Whoa.
So, screenplay score for me, I think it's such a shame because I think it would have been such a perfect movie if they just dealt with the screenslaver plot a little bit better, a little bit.
A little blah 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 blah. A little blah 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 blah.
I just
blah, 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 blah. Anyway, carry on.
I just wish they handled the screenslaver plot a little bit better, a little bit cuter, a little bit more sophisticated. But
yeah, I would say kind of like the villain is the weak point because she's not going to be
Evelyn.
Yeah, she's not going to be the character that I really remember from this film, which is strange, With a villain, I remember Syndrome. Syndrome made a huge impact on me. And, she doesn't. She just doesn't.
But saying that, the family struggles Bob goes through, it's really good. And it is kind of a little bit emotional as well. So I'll go 8.6. How about you, sir?
I'll go an 8.
Voice acting, then. I think what was so great about the first one is the fact that you could recognise in the character choices that they really found some great voices to play some of the minor characters. And I'm not sure they found amazing voices in this film. But one which is great is to hear Bob Odenkirk as Winston Deaver, the naive like business tycoon, and you feel like Brad Bird is a big Breaking Bad fan and was like, well, the only guy to play Winston Deaver is the guy who played Saul Goodman.
Yeah,
very similar characters in tone.
they really are. Maybe he's like Saul Goodman's, father or grandfather or something.
Edna Mode is great again in this film, voiced by Brad Bird. Definitely not in the film enough for me. The voice acting is not as good in the first film, but there's definitely a different dynamic with Edna's interactions with Jack Jack. She really takes to him, and it's just a brilliant, funny, different side to her. But again, just not enough of Edna. Like, the best character. It's just like,
Yeah, she is good.
It's a shame.
Yeah, I like the bit where she's like, she's looked after the baby and she's got all this equipment on to deal with the powers and like, what do we owe you? Basically the rights to design all your costumes for the rest of time. But looking after this baby, it's free, darling, Fucking loves this kid. Bob, Mr. Incredible. I think Mr. Incredible might be my favourite.
Craig T. Nelson.
Yeah, Greg T. Nelson. I think he's my favourite. And especially just as everything is very difficult for him. Like, he feels kind of emasculated by Elastigirl, and you could tell that's really getting to him. And the way he kind of performs that. Then home life is really getting to him, just like stress. It's like, how the hell does she deal with all these kids? You can tell it's like taking his energy out. It's just, I cannot deal with this. And then on top of that, Jack has abilities. Just like, holy shit. I love his voice acting where he's so exhausted. He just cannot even, keep his eyes open, and his voice is just like really kind of, where he's trying to explain the situation to Frozone, and the way he's explaining, he just doesn't care anymore. The baby can vanish, and Frozone's like, holy shit, like, what the hell? And he's like, oh, that's nothing. Cookie. And he goes,
Nom nom cookie.
Nom nom cookie. Like, he just doesn't care. And he goes, but when you take the cookie away, and it like turns into a monster. Samuel Jackson's like, oh my God.
Yeah. I love the bit when Bob comes back to Edna Mode's place to pick up Jack Jack, and then when she puts Jack Jack through like the display testing thing behind the glass, and then when he starts to change into the demon baby, Bob's like, oh my God, we need to get cookies. You got any cookies?
Yeah.
He's brilliant in that bit.
That was funny.
But I really liked Sarah Vowell, who plays Violet Parr. I think she has some really interesting material to work with in this film, because she has to get really mad at Bob at times because of how badly Bob treats her.
Yeah, I love where she first like loses his shit. It is like when she realizes he had his mind erased. And I love that because he's just talking about it very casually while he's opening the fridge and getting some stuff. Oh yeah, Decker or whatever, he's had to erase many memories and shit, and closes the fridge, and she's right there, like pissed off. Yeah, like, you got his memory erased. And then she takes her suit, like, I renounce this, and can't like destroy it in the garbage disposal.
Oh, my favourite, is Jack Jack. Just all the brilliant, like, aggressive baby noises from Ellie Fusil. It's just really funny. I can't do it. just hilarious. What's yours?
Yeah, I think mine would be Mr. Incredible.
So my score for voice acting, again, I just miss Edna, as Brad Bird doing Edna, just not in it enough.
Yeah.
So I'll give it like a 7.9, I think.
I think that is very fair. I was actually going to suggest that.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
Because this podcast is set up in 3 different segments and we have to judge acting, it's just voices in animation, so you have to take off a few points for that. So
I'm struggling. I'm either going to go 7.9 or I'm going to go 8. I'll go 7.9. I'll go 7.9.
Okay. Cool. Right, let's add up the scores then for Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2 gets 50.3. So Incredibles 2 wins this one with 53 points, whereas Star Wars The Force Awakens was completely robbed with 48.9.
Sore loser. If you want, I could put an extra 0.5.
No, it's fine.
Are you sure? You're not going to be butthurt?
No, I'll just cry later in the corner. Right, next week, as another film from a very high-profile director. House of Gucci will be out in cinemas, starring Adam Driver and a completely unrecognisable Jared Leto and Lady Gaga. And that film is directed by, of course, Ridley Scott, so we'll be having a look at Ridley Scott films, and we've kind of already done a Ridley Scott episode in disguise when we did space films, when it was Alien versus The Martian, so we won't be picking those.
Yeah, shit, and I think that was the time where I actually realised he directed The Martian.
Yeah. And as always, we have a Buy Me a Coffee account, so if you want to say a big thank you, follow the show notes below, click on the link, and you can say a big thank you and just spend a couple of quid. That would be amazing. Boaz, you have been incredible, as always.
Yeah. You have been something to do with Star Wars.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it for this week's pod. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to find out more about the podcast or suggest future topics for us to discuss related to upcoming releases, let us know on Instagram at Film vs. Film Podcast and on Twitter at FVF_podcast. Remember, please subscribe. Pod signing off.